List all the factors of the following number. So, a few key distinctions here I want to talk about. The list of factors versus the product of prime factors. So the list of factors are all the whole numbers that multiply with one other number whose product is the number we're seeking. So for example, 48, well, I know 1 times 48 is 48, so I know 1 and 48 are both factors. On the other hand, 9.6 times 5 is also 48, but 9.6 is not a whole number, so 5 is not a factor because it needs to be the product of whole numbers or integers, which we'll talk about what that means at some point. So to list the factors are to list all the whole numbers when multiplied by another number gives you the number whose product is what you're seeking. Product of primes is saying like, oh, well, I know 2 times 2 times 3 is 12, so this is how you get 12. Well, yes, that is one way to get 12, but it's with multiple numbers, so that's the product of primes, not a list of factors. So this is going to be focusing on listing factors. So you might want to pause the video at this point if you haven't done this already and see if you can list all the whole numbers you think multiply to 48. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So I said 1 and 48. I know I wrote those. So 1, and I'm going to write them on the outside like this. And this strategy, I'll talk about what this does in a second. So 1 and 48. Does 2 multiply to 48? Well, one strategy you can use to figure this out is you just do 48 divided by 2. Because 2 times what equals 48 is the same as 48 divided by 2. And this gives me 24. So I know that 2 times 24 is 48. What about 3? So 48 divided by 3, 16. So I know 3 and 16 are factors. What about 4? You'll notice I didn't give myself enough room here. Let's expand that. Sorry, you can't do that. Is 4 a factor? 48 divided by 4. 12. So 12 is. What about 5? We tried 5 and we got 9.6, so that didn't work. What about 6? 48 divided by 6. 8. So 6 and 8. What about 7? 48 divided by 7, 6.857, no, so 7 is not. What about 8? Well, I already have 8. So that's one of the advantages here, is if you list to the middle, when you hit a number you've already listed, you're done. So this is the list of all the factors. Okay, so these are the list of factors that multiply. These are the factors of 48. These are the whole numbers that, when multiplied by one other number, the product is 48. So I'm going to pause the video for a second and I'll do the next few and then we'll talk about it. Alright, I'm back and you can see I've listed the factors of each of these. So I used the same technique, I just worked outside in. And I didn't just use my calculator to divide, I started using some divisibility rules. So some things to think about is something's divisible by 2 if the last number is even. It's divisible by 3 if the sum of the numbers is divisible by 3. 4 is if the last two numbers divisible by 4. 5 is if it ends in a 0 or a 5. 6 uses the rules from 2 or 3, etc., etc. 10, you might know the rules. So there's ways of just checking this without having to just type bit repetitively into the calculator, and this starts to develop your number sense. So it's really important that you don't just brainlessly do these, because later, in algebra, you're going to need to have a sense for these numbers, and if you don't develop it along the way, it's just going to seem like a bunch of guesswork. So 48, 210, and 192, you'll notice have a bunch of factors. 17 only has 1 and 17. And when the only factors are 1 in itself, we refer to this as a prime number, whereas these others are referred to as composite numbers, because they are made up by more than just 1 in itself. So hopefully this gives you flavor of how to list factors, what it means to list factors, as well as what a prime and a composite number is.